Please remember that the complete information for the class that you are about to view is at elithecomputerguy.com. Not only do we have our videos there, but we have part lists, diagrams, pictures, and even complete code examples. So if you are watching this video and you want more information, please go to elithecomputerguy.com. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and in today's class, we're going to be creating a simple network scanning web application. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using Linux, we're going to be using Apache as our web server, and then we're going to be using a piece of software called nmap that allows you to very easily scan your local area network. Essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to use a cron job. So a cron job is a scheduled task. We are going to schedule for nmap to be run every 10 minutes, and then the output of the nmap routine will be outputted in such a way that we will be able to read that in any standard web browser. So you'll be able to create this little web application on your local area network, and then somebody with a web browser on the local area network will then be able to go to your server, will be able to see the results of nmap. From those results, you'll be able to see things such as IP addresses, port information, MAC addresses, the vendor of the particular device, and a few other things. This is a very simple network scanning web application, but it will show you a number of different types of technology, how to bring those things together, and this might actually be useful for you in some situations in the real world. So the warning for today is basically the standard warning I will give you for almost every project that I do. Again, it's very important to understand whenever you deal with a technology professional to understand where they are coming from, what problems they're trying to solve, and so why they design the things the way they do. So for me, I am trying to educate you. I'm trying to teach you how all this kind of stuff works. So most of the time, I am not worried about security at all. I am very worried about making sure the project works for you. So you will notice in the project today that I've changed the ownership of the HTML folder for Apache to Ubuntu, to the standard user for the distribution of Linux. I have also done the permissions to 777 for the HTML folder. This basically makes the folder wide open. The important thing here is basically I'm trying to make sure that this project actually works for you and that you technically understand what's going on. And so if you decide to take what I'm showing you today and put this in the real world, do make sure you actually close down the security, you change ownerships, you look at vulnerabilities and that type of thing. What I'm showing you how to do today is I'm showing you how to use this technology. The actual thing that comes out of this is good for a demonstration environment, but I would be very, very cautious about using this in the real world. So that's one of the things just to keep in mind. Again, keep it in mind with all the projects I do. The other thing is I'm actually going to be using the Raspberry Pi 4 today. I am surprised. I'm using the Ubuntu desktop distribution on my little Raspberry Pi 4 with 4 gigs of RAM, and I have to say it works nice, just so you know. Raspberry Pi 4 with Ubuntu Desktop actually works surprisingly well, but you do not need to do this on the Raspberry Pi 4, and you also do not need to use the Ubuntu Desktop distribution. So I'm using the Ubuntu Desktop distribution simply because it's easier for you to follow along. It's a graphical user interface, obviously. But it is important to understand everything that I'm showing you today with PHP, with nmap, with cron jobs, all that kind of stuff. It can completely be done from the command line. So you can use the standard server distribution of Ubuntu, and you can use that standard server distribution on a normal x86 machine. You can use it on a virtual machine, or if you've got a little Raspberry Pi 4 laying around, you might also want to try it out on the Raspberry Pi 4. But the actual physical hardware doesn't really matter for this project today, and also you do not need that graphical user interface. So with that, let's go over. I will show you the results. I will show you what this looks like when you actually go to the little web page I've created on my little Raspberry Pi 4, and then we'll go and I'll actually show you how it's been built. So here we are, my demonstration computer, and I've opened up the web page that I've created to show the nmap results. So the Linux server that I have is at 192.168.1.23, and then the PHP script is the network.php script. What this does is basically this adds a timestamp to the top of the page, and then it adds the nmap results below that. For nmap, again, if you have not played around with nmap, I would highly recommend you play around with nmap. This is simple network scanning software for Linux. It's great. It works on the command line. You can do a lot of fancy, interesting things with it. So again, if you haven't played with it, definitely play with it. But basically, I've done a very simple thing here. So this shows me what the command actually is that I had run. And basically what I'm doing is I'm running nmap, and then I am outputting. So what this does is this outputs in text format to this particular page. So basically what I'm saying here is I want to run nmap. I want the text output to be output to nmap.html, and then this is what I want to scan for. So my particular network is 192.168.1.0. It is a class C, so that is a /24. So basically what this is saying is I want nmap to scan this entire subnet, and then I want to output the results to this particular file right here. Then we go down and we can take a look at what the results are, and they are actually, relatively impressive for just a little simple piece of software. So it shows us what the IP address is here. So 192.168.1.1. So this is my my default gateway. It shows me the ports. It also shows me what state they're currently in. So these ports are open. It gives me the MAC address here, and then it also gives me who the vendor of this particular equipment is. So you can see, okay, so this is this particular device is made by Netgear, and if you know what your network is, then you probably have an idea of what that device is. So, okay, it's Netgear. I know this is one of my network appliances. Then we can go down here. We can see 192.168.1.2. We can see services that are open. So this is airport. So this is one of my airport extremes. I have a lot of stuff going on, weird stuff going on my network. Again, the MAC address, and it's an Apple. Come down here, 192.168.1.3. We can see this has iPhone Sync on it. So again, another Apple device. And basically you can go through and you can scan. You can see these are all the different devices that have been picked up on my network. It gives me the vendor, gives me the IP address, gives me the MAC information, gives me stuff about the ports, so on and so forth. So this may be very useful for you, especially if you walk into a new environment. So back when I used to have my computer repair company, right? Many times we'd walk into an environment and you honestly had no idea what the hell was connected to the network, right? If you talk to the owner of the business, they would tell you about the computers that were connected to the network, but they might not tell you about servers that were connected to the network. They might not tell you about printers that were connected to the network. And especially in this modern world of IoT devices, there just might be a crap ton of stuff connected to the network. And so one of your jobs when you initially do a site survey is you may have to go down and track down all this information, sometimes just to verify that it exists, or maybe do an update, maintenance, sometimes to pull it out of the network. You may have old servers, may have old equipment that just needs to get powered off, right? And so one of the cool things about having this open in a web browser like this is not only can I view this as I'm walking through the environment, so I can view this on obviously my computer. Since it's simply a website, I could view this on my smartphone or my tablet. And beyond that, again, if you're an old timer like me, you can simply right click, you can do a print page, and then what I can do is I can literally print out this report, and what I would do is clip this to a clipboard and then slog through the environment trying to figure out where all these different devices are, scribble out the information, X stuff off, that type of thing. So that's one of the reasons why this type of thing, I know it seems like very, very simple, but could actually be very useful in the real technology world. So with that, let's go over to the computer and I will show you how this gets built out. So here we are at my Ubuntu server. Again, I'm using the latest desktop distribution, but for whatever you're doing, you really only do need the command line. I'm simply using this so it's easier for you to follow along at home. Now I'm going to run through how I actually built out this server. It is important that at this point, you know a bit about Linux, you know a bit about how to build out a web server, you know what the hell a cron job is, right? I'll try to explain everything to you, but you do need a little bit of understanding of how Linux and all of that works. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to go to the terminal and we need to actually install the services that will be required for this particular project. I have actually already installed them, but I'll show you what the commands are. So the first thing that we're going to need is we are going to need the web server itself. So we're going to be using Apache 2. Okay, if you want to use Nginx, if you want to use something else, by all means, use a different web server. I use Apache 2 because I'm old. Why does Eli use Apache 2? Because he's old. Sometimes that's the answer. Sometimes, sadly, that is the answer. So anyways, if you want to install Apache 2 or whatever web server you want to install, you would do sudo apt-get install Apache 2, and then that will install Apache 2 for you. Again, I actually have already installed Apache 2, so I will not actually run this. Past that, you are then going to need to run PHP. So we are going to need PHP as a back-end programming language. We don't use it for a lot. We use it for very, very, very little. Basically, this code you saw when I first opened this up is all we're using the PHP for, but we do need it for that. So we do need to install PHP, and so you're going to need to install PHP. Past that, we are then going to need to install nmap. So nmap is not included with your standard distribution of Ubuntu at least. So you're going to need to install nmap. So you're going to do sudo apt-get install nmap. And then that's what's going to install it for you. Past that, then, we are then going to have to modify the permissions for that HTML folder. So again, as I've talked about before, we are going to be writing into the HTML folder. So the HTML folder is the default location for the web server. Whatever is in the HTML folder is what is accessible from the outside world. And so if we go take a look at that, we can see the modifications that I've made. So we're going to do cd var www. So this is going to bring us to the www folder for Apache. But this is not the public folder. The public folder is the HTML folder. So if I do ls-l for this directory, basically what we can see here is I have the HTML folder. The user owner is Ubuntu, and then I have changed the permissions to 777 for this particular folder. Again, so basically 777 is completely open. You can, anybody can read to it, anybody can write to it, anybody can access it. Again, this is good for a learning environment. You don't want 777 in the real world. In order to change the ownership and to change the permissions, what you would do is from the var www, you would do sudo. To change the owner, you would do chown, and then whatever owner you have. So basically with this default Ubuntu distribution, the default user is Ubuntu. So I'd say sudo change own, chown, Ubuntu, HTML, and then basically you would hit enter. And if you take a look now, it'll stay the same, right? So basically that is what changes the ownership for you. And then for the permissions, what you would then do is you do sudo change mod, then you would do 777 or whatever permissions that you want, and then you would do HTML, that's the folder, and that goes through. And again, if we look at ls-l now, that would then make it so that Ubuntu, the user is us. We are now owner of the HTML folder, and now the HTML folder is wide open. So again, from a security standpoint, in the real world, don't do this. Do a different permission scheme. I'm just showing you this so it's a little bit easier for you to understand. Then past that, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set the cron job. So cron job is what allows you to schedule basically tasks within the Linux world. So basically you can say every minute, every 10 minutes, every hour, every day, certain days of the week, you can have a task fire off. So a lot of times when you think about tasks firing off, it might be something like a backup, right? So if you want to do a backup of the server and then upload that backup somewhere, you may have a script that gets fired by the cron job. So every night at 11 o'clock, back up the server and then send the results to the cloud. Or maybe an antivirus scan. Every hour run an antivirus scan. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be saying every 10 minutes we want nmap to fire off and basically run that command that I showed you previously. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do sudo, and we're going to say cron tab. This is what allows us to edit the cron job configuration, and E. So sudo cron tab space -e. This will allow us to edit. And then we're going to go in and we see this. So basically this is how you edit the cron job information. And what you can see here is this is the timing. This is the timing for when this command should fire off. So basically what this says here is every 10 minutes, so every 10 minutes of every hour, of every day, of every week, of every month, I want you to do nmap, and then this is the network, so 192.168.1.0/24. So basically this says the entire subnet. So slash 24 is the entire subnet of this address I want you to scan, and then we're going to output the file into var www.html, and then we're going to output it to nmap.html. So it's basically just simply going to get dumped into that particular file, and then we're going to be able to read from that file for the PHP script. Now, when you're dealing with cron jobs, one of the annoying things you get into is trying to figure out this timing scheme. So again, in the Linux world, one of the reasons Linux is difficult is just because I don't know who designed some of the script. I mean, like you look at some of these things and you're like, how is this? How is */10 ******? How does that equal every 10 minutes? What I would tell you is if you're new to the Linux world, or if you're an old timer and you really don't want to strain your brain, there's actually a website you can use. It's called Cron Tab Guru. And Cron Tab Guru basically allows you to plug in what you're looking for, and it will give you the results that you can then basically put into your cron tab. So let's say if I wanted like every 15 minutes, so this says at every 10th minute. So if I modify this, at every 15th minute. So I can sit here and I can play around with things. So this says minute, this is hour, day, month, or day of the week. So I don't know, I could do like 1 here. So at every 10th minute past hour 1, this will do something. Let's see here, a month, I don't know. Let's see, we plug in a month, is it gonna give me results? But basically what you can do is you can plug in information, basically what you're trying to look for here, and then at some point it will then give you the results. So basically this cron tab guru is a useful way just to plug in things and figure out what you need to plug in. And so for this, at every 10th minute, this is what you then plug in to your cron tab here, and so this will run at every 10th minute. Past this, we're then just going to simply exit out, and then we've now exited out. So this is our Linux environment. We've installed Apache, we've installed PHP, we've installed nmap. We have then modified the permissions and the ownerships of the HTML folder. So Ubuntu is now the owner of that folder, and it's 777 permissions for that folder. And then we've set the cron tab, so every 10 minutes nmap will fire off. Now, an important thing to be thinking about with a cron job is do realize that it takes a while for nmap to work. So nmap takes anywhere between 90 seconds to a few minutes to actually go through and do everything that it needs to do. So you don't want the timing for that cron job to be so quick that basically the first job can't finish before the second job fires off. So that's one of those things you have to think about, especially if you maybe have a large network. If you have a large network with hundreds of different devices on it, it may take a long time for nmap to be able to scan that entire network. And so you may want to set the cron job for every 20 minutes or every 30 minutes or every 60 minutes, that type of thing. The other thing that I will warn you for this particular project, one of the downsides to it is while nmap is functioning, you will not be able to see the results on the web page, and so that can be a downside. So basically, once the cron job is fired off, nmap is scanning. At that point, you will not be able to see any results. You will only receive the results once the nmap has finished. So one of those things just to be thinking about there. Past that, we're then going to go and we're going to look at the PHP script that I've created. And so basically with this PHP script, it is all very simple, but I put a couple of things in here for utility and troubleshooting purposes. So the first thing is obviously with PHP, we're going to open up PHP. We're then going to echo. So we're simply going to say a server timestamp, and then we're going to use date, and then the date function, and then we're going to format the date function to be a timestamp that we can actually read. So if we go over here and we take a look at the page, basically this is what we have here. So we have server timestamp, and then we can see it's at 2:29:53. So basically as we refresh, if I refresh this, we now see 3:04:18. So one of the things this shows me is it shows me that the server is actually functioning. It hasn't locked up, it hasn't frozen, that type of thing. And then the other thing that I can look at is basically the difference between this and the last time that nmap fired off. So for whatever reason here, we can see that it's actually been about 14 minutes since it fired off, but it shows me the difference. So basically I can go, oh, okay, so it's been a little bit since the nmap fired off. It'll probably fire off in another couple of minutes or so. And so that gives us a little bit of a troubleshooting routine there. Then we can go here, and then basically what we're going to do So we're going to echo. We're going to echo pre. So this is pre-formatting in the HTML world. So what this means is sometimes when you output in a text format, when you open up that text format in an HTML web browser, since there are no HTML tags, it'll just be one big mass, right? So what we're going to say is we want to echo out the information in the nmap.html, but we want to echo it out pre-formatted so that it actually looks like this. So we have the spaces, we have everything basically, so it's relatively easy to read. So we're going to do pre, then we're going to do include. So basically include allows you to include another file. And so we're simply going to include that nmap.html file that we've created. So if we go here, we can see that nmap.html file. This is what gets outputted from the cron job. If I want to, let's see, open with another application, we can simply open it up with a text editor. And then when we open it up with the text editor, we can see what the results are. So these are the results if we simply open it up with the text editor. So basically what we just simply want to do here is we want to pre-format those results. Then we're going to close a pre-format. Then we're going to close a PHP script. And so if you have that, then this is what you then get. So basically we get the server timestamp at the top, and then we get whatever the results are from nmap down here. And so that gives us a little bit of a decent little application here. One of the things that I will warn you is, again, if we do something such as if we simply comment out the pre-format, one of the issues that you will run into is that you'll just get one big blob. So again, if we go back to the demonstration machine, I do a refresh here. See, this is what you get if you don't use the pre-format. Since there's no HTML tags in that nmap.html document, everything just gets turned into this one big block that's pretty difficult to actually understand. Whereas if we go and basically we get rid of those commenting, so we now have the pre-formatting again. With that pre-formatting, now we can actually see the formatting. And so that gives us a little, basically, you know, a network scanning web application. It might be useful for your particular environment, and it also allows you to play around with a couple of different technologies, a couple of different languages, and start to understand how all of this stuff works together. So there you go. Now you know how to create a simple network scanning web application. So this might be useful for you if you're an IT professional and you're going into new environments where you don't know what devices are connected to the network, what devices you're responsible for, that type of thing. Basically, if you have a little pre-configured Raspberry Pi, you can set all of this up. When you get into your environment, you modify the subnet, basically the network that it's scanning for, and then you can scan that entire network, and then you can do things such as simply print out the results, or as you're going through the network, you can go back and you can see what devices are there, what type of equipment's there, what ports are open, so on and so forth. So this might be a useful little tool for you. Again, do remember in the technology world that basically creating tools is really about building on projects. So what I showed you how to do today, this uses Apache, this uses PHP, this uses nmap, this uses cron jobs, but do remember with nmap, you are actually outputting all of the information into a text file. So if you wanted to add another layer to this, you could have some kind of PHP script or some kind of other backend script that would parse or read through the output in that nmap file, and then maybe put that information into something such as a MySQL database. So you could also have a MySQL database running on your little Raspberry Pi, and then if it's in the database, then you could then be able to do queries. So if maybe if computers pop onto the network and pop off the network, from a security standpoint, right? Imagine if I'm a hacker and I've put some kind of computer device onto a network, I may not want it to always be on the network. So I may have it, you know, basically turn itself on, or basically turn on the network component maybe every 10 minutes, do some type of scan, and then turn itself off. So if I'm using network scanning, and then every once in a while, you know, like every couple of hours or whatever, it detects a particular device, If that information is then put into a MySQL database, you can then create queries, and basically that could then alert you. Basically alert you to like non-normal computer behavior. So normally a computer is on the network and it's on the network 24/7. So what you could do is you could create a little SQL statement that basically asks for, when is a computer not always on the network, and you might find out that some particular device only shows up on every 5th hour, or only shows up once a day. And then if you see that, either one, you have a broken piece of equipment that might be causing a lot of problems, or you have some kind of hacking device that you really need to track down and figure out what's going on. So I know what I showed you today seems relatively simple, but again, one of the things you have to be thinking about in the technology world is you start building on all these things. Once you understand how Linux works, then you get to start understanding how cron jobs work. Once you understand how cron jobs work, then you understand how Apache works. Once you understand Apache works, and then you have to understand how PHP coding works. Then once you understand that, then you can use nmap. And then once you understand nmap, then you can have cron job basically fire off nmap that then outputs into a text file. Then you have a PHP script is able to read and then be able to present as a website. And then you can add to that and have a different PHP script, then be able to parse the values that are in that text file, and then do something like dump that into a MySQL database. And then you can have some kind of other routine that basically scans through that MySQL database when weird things are seen on the network. That might then be able to fire off an SMS or an email message to an administrator that should be alerted about that type of thing, right? This is how we build. A lot of people say that, when I talk about technology or when I teach technology, I always teach the simple things. And one of the reasons I get frustrated is because it's all simple. Linux is simple. Apache is simple. PHP is simple. Nmap is simple. Messaging services are simple. What you do is you layer all of these things into a big old sandwich, and then you get something pretty impressive. So that's why I wanted to show you this particular project today. Again, I think it's an interesting little thing to play around with. Definitely play around with it. Definitely see how it works for you. Again, modify the hell out of it. I would highly recommend you modify the hell out of it. First being dealing with permissions and security. Do be careful about that. As always, I enjoy doing this class. Look forward to seeing you at the next one.
If you like the content that I create, please think about going to elithecomputerguy.com and becoming a member or donating. Please understand that all of the educational videos are in front of the paywall. That includes the videos, that includes the notes, the diagrams, and the code example. All of that is freely available and in front of the paywall. But if you want to watch opinion videos or if you want to be able to comment, you do need to become a member. Membership is $5 a month or $60 a year and gives you access to those opinion videos and the ability to comment. If you don't want to become a member, you just want to give a one-time donation, there's also a donate button where you can do that. Please understand, in order to provide the education that I am, it does cost money. Servers cost money, equipment costs money, travel costs money. All of these things cost a reasonable amount of money, and the fact of the matter is YouTube's advertising program no longer supports creators the way that it used to. So if you want these classes to continue to stick around and you find them to be valuable, please think about either becoming a monthly member or donating a few dollars for this project.